So thank you guys for your patience in joining us in the little technical difficulty. We have Andrew, Chuck, Michael here with us right now, and David will be joining us at 11:30. They're going to introduce themselves. He is in a class presenting. Andrew, do you want to kick it off and do a short intro?
Oh, sure. Everybody, thanks for joining. I know some of you, not all of you. Andrew Dietz. I am co-founder of Messaging Machines. We're a firm that provides AI sales and marketing solutions to mid-market companies and professional services firms. I'm also the a partner in a marketing agency called Creative Influence.
Chuck.
And
Michael, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name's Michael Rodriguez. I'm a professor of marketing at East Carolina University, located in Greenville, North Carolina. And so we specialize in providing education in sales and in also analytics, specifically in AI and Gen AI. And been with I've just joined ECU this past semester, but been in the space probably for almost 20 years now.
Excellent. Chuck.
Amazing. You guys should listen to these people. So I'm Chuck Ingram. I'm the CEO of congruentX. I'm also a practitioner. I've been, like Michael, kind of about 20 years in this CRM space. And now over the last 5-6 years, it's become CRM plus AI. I'm kind of doing it every day, talking to multiple clients about CRM and AI and what they're trying to do. My backstory is most entrepreneurs have something they very intensely want to fix, and mine is ineffectiveness of CRM, and AI has been a blessing there. About half the people that try CRM are not happy with it. And you don't want your Uber driver to crash half the time, and we don't want you to be unsuccessful with CRM half the time. So I help CRM get companies get CRM right so they can outgrow their competition. We're doing it with AI every single day. Like I said, a practitioner, so I'm kind of like a plumber. I'm the plumber on this call. I'm an AI plumber.
Awesome. Now we'd like to have a little bit participation with everyone on to see where you guys are in your AI and CRM journey. So I'm going to launch a poll here, and if you can give us an idea of where we're at.
And excuse some typos there, but you got the idea.
Yeah. Yes.
So most, we didn't have something here about, is anybody really super advanced and, got it all figured out. But if there's anybody like that, raise your hand.
I don't know if any of us have totally. Right.
So,
most people are working on it.
Yeah. It's what I would have expected. And some are using for analytics. I'd be curious if people are using it for forecasting. It could be particularly relevant. Michael, thoughts?
As far as, we look at this as, from a forecasting perspective, it all depends on what type of AI they're utilizing. And I think a lot of people in companies, individuals, academics, and students, they all get it confused, right? Not all AI is built the same. So there's traditional and generative AI. And, if you ask, the average person, when was AI created? Most of them say about 10 years ago, and it's been around since the 1950s. And so now it's one of the things that, it's an exciting time for AI, but as we looked in the history of CRM, we don't want to create the same mistakes, right? Where CRM, was supposed to be the panacea, right? The magic wand that solved all sales and marketing problems. I don't think it's ever happened, right? And so hopefully AI doesn't recreate that same issue where it increases productivity and hopefully it doesn't become a burden for the end user.
Yes. Yes. So we're going to dive in, kind of here's a brief overview of the agenda, the framing, the why, and then we'll open it up and some next steps.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Let's
Dive
jump
in.
in.
So the framing opportunity.
You want me to
making
take this one?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea is, we know that, I mean, CRM is well established. Gen AI is, in processes. So we saw most people or many are experimenting with it. The challenge is that, with or without AI, unaligned systems and teams create, inconsistent results, but, the wrong tech can exacerbate that. And so, we hear a lot from people who have various tools, but they're not necessarily working together and in sync. It could be one of the challenges that CRM has had, and AI may well provide the opportunity to integrate not only the technology so that it works together, but also perhaps the teams, the people themselves, by kind of figuring out the process to make the technology work. There may be an opportunity to bring teams together as well, so sales and marketing work better together. And if we can do that right, technically, and with people, then we can increase the predictability of our marketing engine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Your
the idea,
thought-
and that's what we hope to kind of talk about today.
Yes, yes, yes. So Michael and Chuck, what are your thoughts about the framing and the traditional? Oh, it moved.
Yeah, Michael, you talked about, maybe misunderstanding of certain ideas of traditional Gen AI. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at AI, right? So you look at the kind of evolution of it, right? Obviously you had your analytics, and then analytics built into machine learning, and then machine learning into deep learning, and then we have this foundational AI, known as generative AI, which is ChatGPT, Perplexity, Dolly. And so when we look at traditional AI, we got to think about this. And again, I focus more on sales process, right? So when we look at the sales process, a lot of companies are like, okay, where can we put Gen AI in? And Gen AI is not a fit for all of it. So if you look at the sales process, for instance, traditional AI is about focus on pattern recognition. So it analyzes historical data to classify, predict, or recommend. So this is really good at the end of the sales process, right? Or maybe in the very beginning, right? How do we know if that lead is going to close to a qualified opportunity? How do we know that qualified opportunity is going to close to a deal? So really, from a sales management perspective, traditional AI plays a huge piece in that sales process. Now, from a generative AI, this is where it gets really interesting and I think more exciting, right? So if we look at it,
Mm-hmm.
generative AI, if we're to break it down, is creating new content. So think about that. Think about how long it takes to create an email, a message, a proposal, right? If we just put in certain components of it, right, mastering that art of prompt engineering, we can create personalized emails. We can create call summaries, proposals, and look at insights from that, from both structured and unstructured data. So to kind of break it down, as far as simplicity, traditional AI, it predicts, right? In generative AI, it creates. And so that's kind of that's like the easiest way we can do it. And if we look at it, the key takeaway that traditional AI tells you what might happen, and generative AI helps you decide how to act and draft your next move on that.
Awesome. And Chuck, I know we have the conversation probably every day about the efficiency versus effectiveness.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I love what you said, Michael. I'm reading a book right now called AI Valley, and I didn't realize that they were thinking about this and using this term so long ago. But on a practical standpoint, as Tasha, as you were alluding to, is what we're seeing is sort of a best practice is to stack efficiencies and effectiveness. So, you can summarize an email so you can. So for example, Michael mentioned the sales process. 82% of companies think that salespeople who call on them aren't prepared for calls. That's not great. So I'll give you a real world example. We have a client who sort of on their third strike with CRM. They had low adoption, bad data. They tried CRM-A, CRM-B, and they were on CRM-B, and try a different one? And they'd work with a big consulting company. A big consulting company did what sometimes big consulting companies do. They built big forms in the name of a 360-degree view. But if you think about it, we consume technology differently than we used to. So if I'm going to go for a walk with my dog, my watch just says, "Hey, are you going for a watch? Going for a walk." And I don't have to. I just push a button that says track it. I don't have to fill out a form. I don't need a 360-degree view of my neighborhood. It's contextual. It's a moment that matters. And for this particular client, we worked with them to identify, different people use different terms like moments that matter, moments of truth. We found constraints in their process. And one of theirs was before they walk in to see a client. And as I mentioned, 82% of companies think sales people aren't ready for calls. Well, 50% of salespeople think they aren't ready for visits. So we built an agent that knows that you're at this customer site. It pops up to tell you what's going on with that customer, what orders are there, what the revenue trends are, what are the open cases, and prompts you on stuff to talk about. And now these guys have their reps using CRM through an agent 60 times a day. So that's an example, I think, where we can stack efficiency and effectiveness together to help drive wallet share.
I love that, Chuck. It's not an either or, but there's been so much emphasis on efficiency and replacing people. And the reality is, and my partner Ken and I were talking about this morning, what's going to get AI in the door first is efficiency and savings. But what's really going to make, to me, what gets me turned on is the ability to use AI to improve creativity and differentiation for marketers and salespeople.
For sure.
So, it brings me to the last one here, which is, we run into this a lot. People say, "Oh, we know all about generative AI. I use ChatGPT, all the time," and that's cool. But that's someone using generative AI in a one-on-one approach. ChatGPT in a browser. They're working alone, outside the company's systems. It's great for brainstorming, writing emails, summarizing meetings, etc., creating content. But AI doesn't know necessarily in that situation anything about the professional CRM, the customers, the pipeline, the marketing activity, the brand positioning, the ideal customer profile, all those things that really are going to change the nature of the response you get. It's fast, it's flexible, but it's isolated.
Yes.
And what we're going to really be talking about today is embedded enterprise AI, for lack of a better term. Maybe there's, it's something that works across a team. You just described a perfect example, right? A tool that taps, it's agentic, probably tapping, multiple tools, CRM for sure, marketing automation, outreach platforms. Everyone sees the same insights, content, recommendations based on real customer data. And then the AI agent can work with that data to suggest the next best message or align marketing and sales plays, et cetera. That's the difference. It's replicable, it's scalable, and it taps into the kind of information that's going to provide really tailored responses to you based on your firm and the customer you're talking to.
Excellent. Now we're going to dive in to the why, the what, and the how. And David will be joining us at 11:30. But Chuck, if you could kick us off from the CRM side, what prevents companies from getting real traction with AI today?
Well, Tasha, I have a chance to talk to chief revenue officers a lot, in addition to folks in IT. And given the economic situation right now, revenue is important. If think about it, if you took a job and you knew you only got 18 months, and what we figured out was that chief revenue officers, their average tenure is only about 18 months. So imagine
lowest of all the C-suite people.
I know that's pretty rough, right? So, and you take the job, you say, okay, I got my big plan to go grow revenue, and you go ask the board for more headcount, and they say, no, you can't have it, but you can have an increase on your number. And then you go to IT and you ask about AI, and they say, what do you want to do with it? And you discover what Salesforce tells us, which 91% of CRM data is inaccurate or bad. So I like to watch Premier League soccer on Saturday mornings. I can't imagine how you can coach your team if you're like in the locker room. Like they can't be next to the field coaching the team if the data is bad.
Right.
So I think about it this way is in terms of getting traction. Step one, let's take the friction out of getting good data in CRM. So Michael talked about some efficiency things, and yes, like what if I'm about to walk into a client and Andrew, I see that ABM emails are going to that key customers that I'm going to be interacting with. What if I have a meeting and my stuff just goes into CRM? All of a sudden, we've taken all of the friction out of, and everybody know what digital friction stands for? I got
Tell
to
us.
yeah, it's the extra work that technology makes us do that we didn't have to do anyway. So we want to remove that digital friction out of our way to do our job. So if we can use AI to help us interact with CRM, just in the context of our work, put the information in CRM, and in the context of our work, deliver it back to us, all of a sudden our good friend, the CRO, who's on a short rope, now has good data. And I can start to apply my playbooks and my methodologies against what's going on with my team to drive best practices and hopefully get to revenue predictability, performance, and insights. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah. So Andrew, what's behind, do you think, the disconnect between marketing and sales when it comes to AI and CRM integration?
Yeah, and I think this is, as I think about that, what I'm about to say probably goes well beyond AI and CRM specifically, but it's definitely linked to it in marketing automation too. And those breakdowns I see most often happen when there isn't an agreed definition of what a ready lead looks like. No coordinated kind of play triggered when a high intent signal that, however we're defining that shows up. So marketing kind of passes leads in a void, sales dismisses them as noise. CRM becomes a place to log activity, but not really to understand customer and prospects. And, AI can help, but only if it's part of a system where both teams see the same signals, trust the same data, and move in sync. So to me, it's not about the technology. It's not about disagreement. It's misalignment and expectations and execution.
That makes sense. Michael, why do you think companies tend to stop at AI-powered tasks instead of building revenue?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I think it's because when, like with any technology, it's always invested in and implemented on a silo base, right? It's never this strategic view of, okay, let's have alignment between sales, marketing, and service and have an overall picture, right? It's never from the customer experience perspective. It's from the perspective of the end user, making their jobs easier. And yes, it creates efficiencies such as better emails or analyzing forecasts. But what does that mean to the buyer, right? So I think that if you had marketing, service, and sales in the same room, which is very rare, but if you do it, then you have a more strategic approach. Right now, it's very tactful. It's a tactical approach where we're looking at, okay, how can we make my job easier as a salesperson? I don't care about marketing. I don't care about customer service. I care about me. But at the end of the day, when you, and it's really just, and I hate to say it, it's a selfish approach, right? We're all selfish. We want it's about what does it do for me? But if we don't take a step back and fix the bigger problem, right? What it means for the buyer, we're going to keep on going this way of that AI and CRM are completely disconnected. And so in order to make that happen, we have to align with not only CRM systems, but the workflows in the process. So again, we're
Mhm.
using AI to send better emails, but we're not using it to orchestrate better revenue outcomes because we're not aligning with it with the customer journey.
Yes.
That makes sense. So I'm going to launch another poll here to kind of see what the feedback is with the biggest obstacles for AI and CRM for you for everybody out there.
Yeah, maybe we should have put all of the above, but whatever's the
Right.
biggest one.
Right. Well, there's a strong leader.
Yeah, there is.
Mhm.
Well, there's
Oh.
some other ones resurging. So
Yes.
Timothy has something else. Can you put it in the chat, Timothy? Or is it not a secret?
Mhm. That's interesting. That it's not surprising
Hap-
about lack of expertise. It's the thing you see the most
yeah.
in
So
reports. But what?
Timothy,
Yeah, go ahead.
happy to chat about that. We're working with a pharma company right now and a wealth management company right now, and relative to conversation intelligence. So happy to have a chat about learnings and so forth.
We may have some people on the call who are in regulated industries, things like that, where
Mm-hmm.
I know we have a number of financial services firms represented on the call. Some of those may have some different issues that
Yes.
also are
Be
problematic.
interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're gonna once David gets here, we're gonna have some questions for him to add to the conversation. But in the meantime, Chuck, where have you seen AI and CRM integrations truly accelerate pipeline?
So I think sometimes the best way to solve a problem is the opposite of the way that everybody else comes at it. Or look at industries where people have solved problems before. Sometimes technology companies try to reinvent things. So you'll see things where technology vendors say, hey, if you just turn on CRM, you will get 50% revenue lift. You will not. You absolutely will not. It doesn't do that. But I think there is success leaves clues. Folks who have been through any kind of business stuff in school or learned about lean manufacturing, there's a thing called theory of constraints, where you can apply lean manufacturing techniques to your revenue engine and then use AI. As Andrew said, you don't always have to start with the tech. You can start with something. A system's throughput is only as equal to its greatest constraint. So I want to give you a real life example where we did this. This client has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of inbound calls a day, and outbound calls to try to sell what they do. You can say key moments that matter. You could say constraints. And we use Bowtie Analytics in our firm. And just think of it like lean manufacturing. They had 3 constraints, and then we narrowed it down to 1. And it was kind of this super duper critical conversation where their top performers spoke a certain way and asked certain questions of their client. And they had 10 minutes to be successful with that conversation. And some people winged it and were eagles and were still successful, but some people winged it and were not successful. So our goal was to lift the 40% in the middle. And by looking at those constraints, we identified that where we could lift their win rate just by 1.5%, not 50%, 1.5%. and that was going to equal a $10 million annual lift in revenue. Just by improving the conversation, the playbook around that conversation, we identified that people weren't talking about cross sells and upsells. Each one of those was another 3 million. One was 3.7. We ended up identifying, and these guys are walking this out, $16.7 million of annual revenue by applying AI, but doing it in a way that is proven. Lean manufacturing, revenue architecture by winning by design. Those guys have done an amazing job of walking that out, but applying normal principles, business principles, but using AI to suss out what the real problem is and then to apply it to drive those revenue outcomes.
That makes good sense. Andrew, can you share an example of how marketing to sales orchestration enabled by AI delivered better results?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early across the board. And so sometimes where we're going to see the best examples may well come from the bigger companies, even though we're really, most of us on this call are mid-market or bigger mid-market companies. But I spoke recently with the CMO of Honeywell, and they're a great example of a company that's in the early stages of enterprise-grade AI orchestration that's already begun to deliver results. They've used generative AI to improve campaign planning and targeting. They analyze competitor messaging before they, put their campaigns together. They assess competitor messaging across channels and helps them figure out how to position themselves in the campaign, build stronger persona-based content faster. So they used AI to do that. That sped up campaign creation. And then they used AI to identify strategigic buyer segments, refine their messaging more, personalize their outreach through CRM. And that process has allowed, at least for the times they've used that process, their campaigns have seen about 4x improvement in pipeline creation and conversion rates. So that's an example. I've seen others too, different types of benefits of teams coming together just in the process of trying to work this out. Sales and marketing teams coming together to try to figure out how to implement this. But the Honeywell story has some real numbers associated with it. And you can read that case, by the way, on the Messaging Machines blog. It's up there if anyone wants to go. Ron McMurtry is the CMO. For those in Georgia, he's also the chairman of the Georgia's Technology Association.
Interesting. Michael, what are the critical success factors you think for aligning AI, CRM, and marketing sales execution effectively?
Another great question. I think one is the first step is have a well-defined sales process or well-defined marketing process that aligns with the customer journey. And so that's the number one factor, right? So again, when I'm working with organizations or doing research, I always say that, technology doesn't define the process, it complements it. So we have to make sure that the company has a well-defined process before they implement any type of technology. In fact, sometimes I'll do this exercise with professionals, whether in sales and marketing. I'll have a whiteboard. Say there's 20 people in the room and I have 20 Post-it notes. And I say, okay, without looking at each other, I want you to write down what your process is, right? To draw a diagram. And if you have 20 people in the room, how many processes do you think you have? 20. They're all different. And then you start this debate, right? It's just no one can match up. So we have to make sure they're all aligned. But as far as, the orchestration, as far as alignment between AI and CRM, I have what I call the 3 C's of orchestration. One is contextual integration, right? That means that you have to have the CRM must feed into Gen AI, the right data, and we already talked about that. Also, the second C, collaboration, which is the AI inputs must be co-owned, right? Not just owned by marketing, but it has to be co-owned by marketing, sales, ops, and service, and not be siloed. So that collaboration is very important. And the last thing I call the closed loop feedback, right? So, and what I mean by that is that it's never ever going to be perfect when you're aligning technologies with process. So you use CRM to capture what works and then fine tune the AI prompts and processes. And that's kind of had that closed loop feedback. So I think those are the critical factors, but it all starts with having that well-defined, process, along with obviously having good data as well. But if you have contextual integration, collaboration, and that closed loop feedback, I wouldn't say it would lead to 100% success, but it will actually be helpful.
Excellent. So
I love a good acronym or alliteration. So thank you for that too.
No problem.
Three C's.
Perfect. Yes.
So how the next is basically we're at the how is how to get started, how to get unstuck. So Chuck, what's the most practical first step companies can take to break through the siloed systems?
Yeah, I'm keen to even get David's take on a couple of these things as we go, but I'll get us going. So first, for companies, you kind of have to start with security. As Andrew mentioned earlier, like I love ChatGPT. I actually pay him for the $200 thing, but you can't. You don't just go put your company's information in ChatGPT. Number one, number two, because it's you don't want to do it. Number two, it doesn't have all the context that you need. So there's secure solutions out there, Copilot for Microsoft, etc. You can partner with your IT. So start with security. But right now, in not to get Jon Snow on you with winter is coming, but we need to get wins. So you don't have to make this a giant ERP project. So look at the jobs to be done that people are doing, and especially if they can cross two departments that don't talk to each other, sales and marketing, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
So think about a salesperson who works with clients who are repeat buyers. That motion usually requires ABM. So there'll be things that require sales and marketing to talk to each other to make work right. And don't look at 1,000 requirements in a document. Salespeople do like 6 things. They plan their week, they plan for calls, they have calls, they follow up on calls, they work on their pipeline, and they do their forecast. Like, we can make it, if you look at whatever your job's to be done for a role that requires collaboration, find 3 to 5 places. I talked about digital friction earlier. 3 to 5 places where digital friction is making people do extra work, and it's affecting your revenue engine. And then let's think about how we can use technology like AI to make it better. How can we get the person the information that feels like the Apple Watch that just magically shows up in context that helps them do that job better? If it comes from marketing, if it comes from customer service, it comes from, and pick 3, compete those things against each other, and do one. And put I get deep into things, so I use my phone like a clock. I'll put it on my desk and say 10 minutes, work on this thing for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, put a timer for 3 weeks and do that thing for 3 weeks. So the first week, I'm giving you a framework. This is what we do with our clients a lot. First week, design thinking, jobs to be done, pick out digital friction, design 3 high-level solutions, pick one, go do it, and look at how you did. Plan, do, check, act. And then you have a plan. You've got evidence that you can shop around your organization that, hey, this worked and it's secure. We can scale it. And then you got your next 3. And then you can partner with your IT team to even start to set up a center of excellence for AI that involves a cross-functional team to make it a thing in your organization. You like that high-level language here, make it a thing? But eventually you want to get to a center of excellence that pushes this out to the team and gives you a framework so that it doesn't go crazy in the organization. It's controlled. So I think that's the framework.
Yes. And welcome, David. I think he should be on off mute.
Apologies, my class ran a little bit late. I was just going to piggyback a little bit on what Chuck said. I think, the place to get started has to be organizational, right? Because, when we were talking analytic projects years ago, the big challenge was organizational buy-in, and the same thing is going to be true in the AI space. The more buy-in that you have from the different units within your organization, the better off you're going to be. One of the case studies that demonstrated the need for that is Moderna, the vaccine manufacturer. Their plan is to significantly ramp up their production of vaccines. I forget how many they're planning on releasing, but they plan on doing it without increasing headcount. And they attribute their ability to do that to every unit within the organization really experimenting with AI, everything from HR, legal to, R&D. And so I think it's getting leaders within each of those units to buy in to incorporating AI into the workflow. And then, so once you have that buy-in, then we can talk about breaking down those silos and making sure that the necessary data to support what you're trying to accomplish is freely flowing across those units.
Excellent. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit, David, and I'd love your perspective on how does orchestration play out when applied to the sales funnel, and what's the academic or empirical view? I said that right.
Empirical, yeah.
Empirical.
Yeah, I think when we look at the orchestration, we look at the sales funnel. Keep in mind, we've got an entire process that's leading up to it, right? And there's a desire, and I've seen this with some vendors in the fundraising space. There's a desire to kind of say, okay, let's implement AI at the very last step, right? Like, let's implement AI when we're kind of making the request from people. And that's certainly a place where you can do it, but I think what we want to be thinking about is where are the places throughout that kind of that purchase funnel where it's behind the scenes, it's not necessarily customer facing, where there's opportunities for improvements in the existing process. I think this comes back to kind of this question of, are we trying to replace the actions that people take with AI, or are we trying to enhance the skills and the productivity of our team members? And at least, in my experiences, betting on enhancing or augmenting the skill set of current employees with AI. That way you're not sacrificing any of the knowledge that they already have, that domain expertise, places where that human touch is still critical, where the relationship is of critical importance. We don't want to kind of take people out of that process unnecessarily, but we do want to increase what people are able to do using these tools.
That makes sense. So Andrew, what do you think the red flags should leaders look out for that signal they're under leveraging AI and CRM today?
I think we probably mentioned a couple of them. If your CRM is primarily being used as a logging tool, if it's less than that, that's even worse. But if it's only really people are logging things, but it's a data dump after the fact, that's a sign it's not driving value, right? And so, it should be a system of intelligence and insights and interaction, not just record keeping. On the AI side, we've talked about sort of solo use or only using AI for small isolated tasks, summarizing calls, writing emails. It's nice, but there's so much more that's really under delivering. What if you could use it to drive coordinated plays or insights that flow across the teams? When it's locked in silos, AI is just automating fragments. So those are the two things. What if we tried here? And finally, if campaign performance feels like guesswork, that's the other thing. The loop between AI and CRM may not be closed. So those are a few signs, I think.
Mhm. Michael, how should marketing and sales leaders frame this opportunity internally to drive action?
Another great question. I think that when you look at it, I think what the mistake has been made, and it's actually not a mistake. I think it was baby steps, right? They looked at it from an automation perspective, right? How to automate certain tasks, and I think I think that was the right idea at first, right? Let's automate, let's make things easier so you could spend more time on less manual tasks and more on the kind of bigger picture things. And so when we look at it, that sales and marketing have to take a step back. Instead of looking at AI, it saves time. It's how do we drive coordinated revenue growth, right? And so I think that having that mind shift from, okay, let's fix a little task, that I think that was the mindset with CRM as well, with any technology. Let's fix the little things, and then when we save time doing that, we can spend time with the client. And that's good in theory, but the salesperson marketer might take that time and play golf, right? Maybe not spend time with the client, right? So you have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, if we're really going to use AI, right, the bigger picture is it's got to drive revenue growth, right, and really aligning with with the buying process, not just the sales process. So when we're looking at the framing that motivates change, it isn't about saving clicks, right? It's about winning revenue, and so that means creating personas and matching up to our solution. That means making sure that the solutions that we're creating is really personalized and tight to what those needs are, and that we're not just kind of this blanket brochure. And then obviously, looking at, and also looking at the leads that are garbage. How many times does sales and marketing spend so much time spending sales cycles on the wrong companies, the wrong individuals? Well, maybe if I call for the 15th time, then now they're ready to buy, right? Sometimes we got to use the AI to say, you know what, let's get rid of those accounts that are not interested, right? And focus on the accounts that we know are going to buy from us. And I think that's going to create that revenue recognition right there. So again, I think, if you ask sales and marketing, what type of personas, and I think that's another challenge, is that they have completely different personas. If you use, and again, that comes in, there's a whole other conversation on bias, right? So when you look at bias, sales, marketing, service has their own bias of what the ideal customer is. If you integrate AI, right, and AI has their own bias as well, but it's less biased than the human being.
David, what role do you think does leadership play in overcoming organizational resistance to the orchestration?
Gosh, if it's if it's coming from leadership, things are going to move faster rather than it trying to bubble up from kind of someone lower in the organization. But I think it's a large part of this is going to have to do with the culture that leadership team creates. Like part of what we need to we don't know everything right now when it comes to AI, right? We don't know what it's good at, what it's going to be bad at. So some of the things we try might not work. And when things don't work, people can't be afraid of trying something just because it fails. And so that's kind of, from a leadership standpoint, there needs to be that mentality of encouraging people to explore these tools, giving them the time to explore these tools to see what's possible. My preferred approach when it's feasible is experimentation, like really encouraging test and learn to see, here's what we tried. We did it in a systematic fashion. Here's what we've learned. Yes, some of the stuff we're not going to do again, but that doesn't mean it wasn't valuable to the organization because we learned ways that we shouldn't be thinking about using AI, right? So I think it's the onus is on the leadership team to empower their employees to be comfortable using these tools and trying to drive productivity with them.
So the mics are open, and love it to get some questions. Use the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. Who has seen this orchestration working or it hasn't in your organization? Anybody out there have experience? Questions? Have any of the panelists have experience or a case that they'd like to share?
I think we have shared some of them, but we've certainly had more.
You have. And there's probably a lot more.
David said something I think is important, is as long as you set up the the right secure framework. The richest guy I ever personally knew was a guy named Roger Millikan. You know, I worked at Microsoft and I interacted with some of their top leaders, but they didn't, you know, Bill Gates didn't know my name. But Mr. Millikan did. And Mr. Millikan used to draw a triangle on the whiteboard, and he put himself here and he said, I'm here because my dad started the company, but the best ideas in our company come from the other part of that triangle that he drew on the board. And I think, sort of to David's point, we as leaders have to empower our teams and encourage our teams to experiment and try these things, and almost have a sticky note on your monitor that says, how can AI help me do the thing? I'm human, I'm doing the thing, but AI can help me. How can it help me do the things I need to do during my day? So I think a lot of it is organizational and setting the right culture.
Well, I can say that I have a little sticky note that says
Yes.
human in the loop.
Yes.
And my daughter will come and read it, and I'll explain it to her. So, but I think that's a huge, knowing that we need to be a part of it, right? Like it needs us.
Well, Michael, it might be good. Michael mentioned process, and sometimes people try to use AI and just tech in general to automate already broken processes.
Right.
Michael, you may comment more on that for folks on thinking through your process first before you try to use AI to automate it.
Right, exactly. So when we finally come to agreement when that process is, then it's okay. This is our well-defined, this is our process for sales and marketing. Now let's look at the challenge and the barriers of each of those, right? And there's some areas that maybe AI can't help, right? The process could be, maybe the process is broken, then the technology can't fix it. So then it's one of those things where, do you eliminate a step in that process, or do you add another step because there might be some gray area? And when we talk about utilizing technology, I always say it's just like a race, right? And how do you win a race? Well, you start fast in the beginning, and that's what you need to do. You need to start in the beginning. I think a lot of companies will say, well, I need AI to help with forecasting. Well, that's kind of like towards the middle, right? Or towards the end, right? We should start with we start in the beginning. And I think that's always the question I get. One of the questions I get from sales and marketing leaders is, where should we start? I'm like, well, how do you run a race? You start in the beginning, right? You don't start in the middle and then the end and go backwards, right? So you want to win the race, start fast in the beginning. So that's what you need to start in the beginning and then kind of move forward in that process. But it's kind of collaborative, right? Sales, marketing, service, ops has to start in the beginning all together, right? Not in the middle of the race.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yes.
Hey,
Totally agree. And, that's a big thing to handle. So, it may be hard to read some of the smaller print on here, but what we're suggesting is maybe we need to put something before this, Chuck, to your point, certainly the security and making sure we're making sure the data is right. All of those are parts of, any kind of AI initiative at the front end. But when we're talking about sales and marketing, we really need to lock the sales and marketing team in a room and make sure that pick one breakpoint, the biggest, or I forget what term you used, Chuck, but where is the bottleneck? Where's the digital friction, right, or analog friction between the groups? Pick one, pick the biggest one, or any of them, whatever one you think you can tackle, and use that as a starting point to try to find let's call it a sprint, maybe not even a pilot, but maybe a more actionable. Can we pick 90 days, try to improve the process for that particular problem, and find a way to automate it, tying, our tools together in the process and our team together in the process. So that's what this slide is saying here, I think.
For sure.
No question, it's about getting the process right first. Which
we need to say
maybe that's obvious, but what would the non-obvious part about that be? The non-obvious part of that comes in when you mix in what AI can do. Go ahead, Chuck.
Andrew, I said at the beginning, I'm kind of a plumber, and I do talk to clients all the time about this. And you're, you know, you didn't say you're a plumber, but I know you're quite the practitioner in this space. It like a lot of times you start engagements and the team, the marketing, the sales teams have not been interacting before. So I think that getting folks talking organizationally is going to be key in this.
You know, we've seen it with that kind of interaction is great. And that we're, you know, Ken and I are seeing it for, you know, there some people we're piloting some tools with. In one case, I mean, in each case, the sales and marketing teams are together when we talk to them about and get feedback. But what we're seeing is things that happen, products change, things that were created for marketing that, let's say, helps them create content or find distinctive thought leadership to create that helps them stand out. Well, when it's helping marketing, there's an option to allow the marketing team to turn that content and to create some, with the push of a button, some sales enablement. So, you know, here's the email the salesperson can send with this. Here's the document that says, here's how you use these tools. So, you know, building the tools themselves so they have integration kind of naturally baked in their functionality is another thing we've seen. You know, when all of a sudden marketing is now more proactively bringing sales enabled, you know, assets to the table for them to use, you know, it builds trust and results.
They love that too.
Well, we have just a couple minutes and want to thank everyone for joining us, and to keep an eye out for a recording and this deck. And please reach out to any of us if you have questions, you want to continue the conversation. Thank you again for bearing with us at the beginning with our Donald Duck and technical difficulties. But do you guys have anything else to add before we close?
I think Craig has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, good. Now, this may be a backwards or an elementary question. I apologize for that in advance, but it is. I am where I am on this. So we're a fairly, I'll say, you know, affectionately, a fairly primitive company when it comes to integrating anything automated into the process. We're also pretty primitive when it comes to marketing. Okay, we really haven't invested a lot. But one thing we do have and we do maintain is our website. And occasionally I get leads handed to me by virtue of whoever it is in the company that's paying attention to people who visit the website, and they hand their email ID over to me. And I'm just wondering, you know, getting started on an AI journey, we have a pretty competent IT department. And I'm just wondering, I don't think we integrate AI at all into our website to, you know, help our visitors to identify, you know, the kinds of content that they would really care about based upon their clicks or their questions or whatever, and to importantly notify somebody that there may be actually a customer standing there or, you know, watching the screen. So, you know, to what extent does that idea fit into this overall integration and journey that you guys were talking about?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. Andrew, I'll let you take, but yeah, the idea of the website, incorporating AI into the website, there's been some work that's looked at this idea of basically tailoring the way that you present the information based on what you know about the person, right? The more you know about them, when you know, like, this is what they're interested in, especially if they're repeat visitors, the terminology that's been used is website morphing. But it's effectively saying, let's use AI to say, okay, I recognize this person. I've seen him before. Here's what I should show him and how I should show it to him.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good because we have like 5 different service lines and it matters. It matters what your questions are to, you know, you need to see the right stuff, not the wrong stuff, not the 80% that's wrong, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
And Andrew, any other comments from your side? Or you've written a book about it, actually.
No, I think David gave a good answer. I mean, there's certainly other ideas. It just makes me think back to what's a good lead and what isn't. A lot of marketing automation tools will track what's hit on the website, what's downloaded, et cetera. And there's some scoring involved. And so far, the old tradition, right? How old is marketing automation? But anyway, the earlier forms, I've yet to see it really produce good scores that are agreed to both by sales and marketing. And AI, I think now I think with AI, we can significantly improve that. Anyway, that's what I was thinking, but I'm not sure that's a direct answer to Craig's question.
That's okay. It wasn't a very deeply thought out question anyway, but it's something that I was wondering about after having listened to you guys and my own experience kind of experimenting with this stuff. It's like there's so much, I think, good information that just sits out there. Nobody ever uses it, right?
No question. No question. All kinds of data that our companies, our clients have that, if we used it, it's not even sales or marketing data necessarily. It may be operational performance data. It may be something about the market. We've got a client that has data on every utility asset out in the market. Well, if marketing and sales actually thought about that together, they go, wait a minute, there's a lot of marketing stories we can tell, and we can equip sales to go out and use this data to sell more effectively. So there's that stuff too that AI may now make possible that was harder before. Yeah, again, exactly. Not a website question answer, but
no, but exactly, it's stuff we wouldn't have even considered before. But now, if we can automate it, then let's give it a try, or at least put a little bit of effort into it.
Yeah, okay. And I could keep going. I know we're at the end of time, so thank you for everybody.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, amazing panel.